You had 7 teams score less than 7 points or less this week in the 13 games. 3 starting quarterbacks, I should say, threw for less than 100 yards. And, yeah, I understand Buffalo, Cincinnati, the Giants, Philadelphia, San Francisco, the Patriots. That could practically be a playoff field there. All had byes this week. But what in the heck happened this week in the NFL? It felt like the 1940s out there.
It just seems like defenses are finally getting up to snuff. I mean, I think, like, defenses, due to the lockout, kind of needed to get their groove back because there's so much to do on defense. There's so much to watch for and really get a feel for the speed of the game. And offenses have the advantage during, training camp because it's constant repetition. They know what they're doing. The defense has to predict what they're doing. And I think the defenses around the league are getting wiser to what other teams are doing. They have more film. And with that said, I think that we've seen a lot of quarterback play digress throughout the season. There'll be a bad game from Phillip Rivers one week. He'll have a great game the next. Then he'll have a bad game, and, then he'll have a subpar game. There's some starters in the league that honestly shouldn't be starting. And, teams are paying for that. Stats and audiences are paying for it. And, I mean, that's just the answer to your question, I guess.
Now, besides a guy like Matt Moore and Curtis Painter, who else shouldn't be starting, in your opinion, right now in the NFL?
I mean, I know they won the game tonight, but I think Gabbert still needs some time to sit on the bench. There's no reason why Kyle Bolter should have been starting in that game. I would have rather have gone with Terrell Pryor or even had Carson Palmer throw all 6 interceptions himself.
I'm not even sure how Kyle Bolter's even in the league. He's been a bust everywhere he's gone. I guess when you get a cuddly backup job, you just don't have to prove anything. He must do something in practice, but he's just a terrible NFL quarterback. But, hey, more power to him. He's made more money than most of us will ever see in our lifetimes, I'd imagine. And, if you can play the system the way he has, why not? Let's talk about the Baltimore Jaguars game today, which was another late-night kind of dud. Yeah, the game was entertaining in the sense it was close, but it was another weird game to go with a weird week. You have the Jaguars ending up on top, 12-7. They win. Basically, Josh Scobie outscored Baltimore. That's basically the extent of the game. You had Maurice Jones-Drew. If you had told me he would have fumbled the ball 3 times and that Gabbert would have been rendered largely ineffective throughout the whole night, I would have said I don't think Jacksonville is going to beat a Baltimore team that many people think could win the Super Bowl. But Baltimore looks like a completely different team on the road than they do at home, which is ironic because the Ravens have been making a living on the road the last few years in the playoffs because they haven't been able to win the AFC North. So that said, if the Ravens don't win the AFC North, which is a 3-team dogfight right now between the Bengals, the Steelers, and Baltimore, do you look at them right now as a team that can win on the road in the playoffs?
I think there's a lot more season to play. I think they're having trouble on the road for unknown reasons to me. I mean, I don't really see – I never really bought the home field advantage unless you're playing with a superb crowd. The Jaguars, well, they might have, had close to a sellout or a sellout tonight. Those fans, I've been in that stadium 100 times. They're not that rowdy, and they're not the type of fans that are going to really, freak a quarterback out to where he throws interceptions. So the excuse for that is gone. I just think they played a bad game. It didn't seem like they found any rhythm. Flacco actually seems like he's kind of digressed in his quarterback play. I mean, he hadn't thrown a touchdown since the St. Louis game in week 3 until the Anquan Boldin touchdown with 2 minutes left to go in this game.
Baltimore's defense hides Flacco's flaws. Obviously, I think Flacco is still a pretty decent quarterback. I don't think he's an elite quarterback, and I don't think he's made the steps people maybe expected him to this year. But if you look at Baltimore's defense, they've allowed 83 points this year. So they lose by allowing 12 points. I mean, most games you're going to win when the team that you're playing can't even get a touchdown on the board. So, I mean, not much Baltimore's defense could have done. I think a lot of people are starting to wonder if Flacco is sort of a Mark Sanchez type of guy, a guy who's leaning on his defense to win him games and can be there sometimes, but overall is just not that reliable and consistent.
And I think that's a fair comparison. I think, his first 2 years, he blew it out of the park. I think the expectations kind of heaped onto him, and he really just, he's not that type of quarterback. He's not Steve Young. He's not Marino. He's not even Matt Ryan, but he can manage a game, and that's what he's supposed to do. And it just kind of seems like he never got a feel for the game tonight. They seemed really stale. Now, granted, the Jaguars were the 8th-ranked defense coming into this game, but the fact that he couldn't even put up 2 touchdowns on him when the balls were being turned over on a consistent basis, it's just there's something wrong. And I don't know if it's the play calling or he's not confident or he's getting hit too much, but it just doesn't seem like he's really found his way this season.
Did Baltimore basically walk into a buzzsaw, though, tonight? I mean, the Jaguars have had a really rough season. They get a primetime game. They get a pretty good, decent crowd tonight. And it just seemed like they were this almost was like their Super Bowl right now, knowing that they aren't going anywhere, knowing that most people are going to have their eyes on this game along with the World Series. It felt like Jacksonville had nothing to lose in this game, and even though they didn't exactly play like it except for on defense, it felt like if this was like a 1 o'clock start game, that Jacksonville probably gets tortured by Baltimore. But because this was a primetime game with a primetime opponent in Baltimore,